All right.
Hey guys, this is Dave March from the Land of Confusion show, and I would go through the normal spiel, but I just got back from a heck of a drive, so I'll just introduce my
Oh,
co-host Don over here.
I am Don, and there's some construction going on that side of the house. So I'm on this side of the house this time because it's just noisy. It's a sound of an excavator.
Okay.
Well, it's new construction, and sound of an excavator over there. But it's the same redwood tree.
Okay.
As
I was just going to say, is this like all those mythical airplanes you kept saying were flying over the last episode?
Anyway, yeah. Right. So that's what we do. And
today
who do we have today for our
Henry Castaigne,
Ricochet member visit
is here today. So Henry, when I approached you for this, you were kind of gave us me a bunch of interesting subjects that you thought might be a little controversial towards the audience. Where would you like to start?
Well, obviously, you have to start at the beginning. Oh, first of all, greetings. 'Tis I, Henry Castaigne. Glory to the improved mankind.
Right.
And you have
looking forward.
You have to start at the beginning, and you have to start off with basic assumptions. So we might as well go back to Thomas Sowell and the constrained and the unconstrained vision. And in the beginning, there were apes. From these apes came Homo sapiens. I think it was about 1,000,000 or 100,000 years ago. It was a long time. Eventually, these apes, as if they were riding a red horse, dominated all of Eurasia, and even then beyond. The Neanderthals and the Denisovans, I think they're called, they fell beneath their great power. Their cruelty was renowned as well as their martial prowess. And it is in this that human beings are made, not in the image of God. And this brings us to Lucifer. And but first, let's go with a quote by Cormac McCarthy. Okay. It makes no difference what men think of war. War endures. As well ask men what they think of stone. War was always here. Before man was, war waited for him. The ultimate trade awaiting its ultimate practitioner. That is the way it was and will be. That way and not some other way. The human being is not made in the image, as far as I can tell. Supposing that God even did make the first Jews, Adam and Eve, and the bearers of his word and his mercy. What humans are made of is the image of evolution, which is more like the H.P. Lovecraft monster Shub. It is breeding and feeding and domination and power. That's what humanity is made of. And this is why I like the idea of Lucifer for a great multitude of reasons. But Lucifer in the story of in the Garden of Eden, I think it's a good thing that we ate from the fruit of the tree of good and evil. That we became intelligent, that we became less animal and more capable of moral intelligence. That it was a good thing to go against God, and to reject nature, because we are made in the image of Shub after all. That's just terrible. War and domination and trying to outbreed the other guy and take his women's. and so that defines my thinking of what human beings are. And that inevitably leads and surprisingly it's mostly in accordance with Christianity. Because Christianity is, as far as I can tell, it is the weirdest religion in that it encompasses both the unconstrained and the constrained visions. Human beings are made in the image of God, and we're also these stupid, violent dudes that never obey what God has said, even though he's clearly said, supposing that God is good, which I don't think is true. And what I like about Lucifer so much is he defies the natural order of things, and the natural order of things are bad. We were trained to be unnatural, which is good, which is very good. When I think this is a point made by Jonah Goldberg, but when the Afghanis, when we're trying to talk to them about good government and documentation and all that nonsense, and they're trying to bribe their countrymen in order to get more goats or secure a political trade, or they think we're weird and that what they're doing is normal, and they're right. There is something inauthentic about civilization, which is good. We should defy our natural impulses. And this brings us to genetic engineering, and why I think it's going to be the best thing ever. As I understand it, it's going to be about 20 years, 15 to 20, before we get genetic engineering good enough that it becomes reliable, where we might be able to, this is a little iffy, we might be able to genetically engineer children in the womb to have higher intelligence, to have better immunity, that kind of thing. I am all about that, because it's sort of we sort of lucked out being as decent as we are. Are you familiar with the habits of chimps, how they conduct war?
Not. I thought it was all slinging.
They throw a lot of poop.
Well, if that's all they did, that wouldn't be that bad. And even then, I think we should genetically engineer ourselves beyond throwing poop. That's just me. But no, they're cannibals. They viciously attack anyone outside of their tribe. They do have some form of diplomacy, but usually that breaks down and just kill everybody. Human beings, as savage as we are, as impressive as we are apex predators. Apes usually, worse than us. Not always. Sometimes you get a Genghis Khan or a Vlad the Impaler that makes chimps look almost
tame,
benign. In not good, but they look almost benign in comparison. And so I'm reading a book right now called Blueprint by Robert Plomin. And are you familiar with the work of Charles Murray, or some of the IQ stuff by Jordan Peterson? And there's some other guy, I forget.
Well, those guys, yeah.
Okay. So this is incredibly depressing. But it's
really.
Yeah.
I'm not joking. I remember listening to Viktor Frankl, and actually, you think Viktor Frankl would be more depressing because he survived the Holocaust. You're thinking about the Holocaust and man's inhumanity to man, and the IQ stuff is actually even more depressing, at least in that particular case. Because it seems the evidence is pretty good right now. And for a long time, psychology just had nothing in it. And so I shouldn't say that, but it didn't really have any evidence to back anything up. Okay. It was just sort of, it's a very, very, very new science. It's not the easiest thing to study, the human mind, but it seems like, and I get resistance to this from Christians, on unthinking resistance from some Christians on Ricochet.
I can imagine.
Yeah, really.
I'm sorry about that, but there's this idea that we're all made in the image of God and that we're all special, and that's fine. But I think Jordan Peterson is right. If you got an IQ of 83, there's not much you can do. I've never heard anyone contradict that, and everyone wants this to be wrong. I'm about halfway through this book by Blueprint, and I don't like it because it says you either have these traits, you're either good at some stuff or you're not good at some stuff. And there's an extremely limited amount you can do if you don't have the right genes for it. Yeah, I'm thinking about doing a post where once I finish this book, because it does seem like it is in contradiction to some of Thomas Sowell's stuff, where he talks about the right way to raise kids and how effective charter schools are. Plowman's of the opinion, same with Murray. I don't know about Murray exactly, but both of them would say it's mostly IQ. That even if you have a bad school, it doesn't matter that much. And Thomas Sowell has has a very, very different idea, even though he does recognize IQ is important.
Mhm.
But the reason I just go on and on and on about genetic engineering is that it seems that we're made mostly, and I consider the human race apex predators,
Mhm.
but and we're very impressive. We're very weird compared to many other animals. However, we're still mostly chimp.
Okay.
Supposedly
Why is
that
the cannibalism?
depends on the tribe. I don't know if cannibalism was universal. I think that human sacrifice was universal, however.
It does appears to be so. I mean, the Aztecs brought it to a whole new level, but yeah,
Well, yeah,
everyone,
they were
everyone was
definitely-
sacrificing virgins for the spring harvest. It looks like.
Okay, yeah, and that's what I've heard. And if you go back far enough, there's weird sacrifices, and almost in every culture that I am aware of. Maybe there may have been like one or two indigenous cultures that just didn't do it, but that'd be more the exception that proves the rule.
Once you get to abundance of resources in the groups, they tend to not do that. But cities, some of the city states in the Mesopotamia did it. But I mean, like native tribes, I'm certainly look at the Inuit, I guess we're calling them these days, having to abandon older relatives so that the group could continue, stuff like that on ice floes and
But
stuff.
hold on, that's a little different. The Inuit were not human. I don't think it was a human sacrifice thing. I think it was just that you just didn't have enough food.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a different kind of deal.
Okay. I'm just curious. Are you self-taught in this stuff, or are you actually a philosophy major, or?
I have a political science degree.
Okay.
For whatever that matters, but
Mhm.
I feel like I've learned more ever since I got that degree than when I got it. However, I did take a class that was useful about political psychology,
Mhm.
and it was useful. It's useful to realize just how little people research and how much they believe in without research. It's still hard for me to wrap my mind around that.
Mhm.
And let me see. So,
Well, that's all very interesting, but where where do you want to go with that? I mean, like for instance, genetic engineering. Why would genetic engineering in the hands of such awful people be a good thing? Or why do you distill everything down to a number like IQ? Or I mean, isn't there more to life in these sorts of things?
yeah, empathy.
About enjoying life and enjoying a lifetime with your fellow mankind. I mean, there's all sorts of things that you're sort of missing out on, I think.
Well, Plowman mentions this, and this was also stated by Arthur Brooks. He seems like a nice guy. His podcast is just too nice, though. I don't know. But he mentioned that he said.
By the way, is it Arthur Brooks? Is that the AEI guy?
Yeah, he's the former head of AEI.
And he said,
he is a very happy guy.
Yeah, this brings.
Yeah, he's Mr. Happiness. He says, yeah.
However, what's weird, because I followed some of his research, and I think his research justifies suicide and euthanasia, and it contradicts the AIE's idea of the infinite potential of the human individual. because about half to 60%. Okay. What's that tree attacking you or what's going on?
It was annoying me.
All right. Maybe just like
And he's the apex predator. He has to destroy what annoys him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Good. Yeah. You show that tree what we do to the Neanderthals. Okay.
Exactly.
But 50% to 60% of our happiness is genetic, and
Wait.
That's what he said.
Nah. Well, okay, it's what he said. Okay. If you're going to be doing genetic engineering, you can crank up the happiness, right?
Yeah, we should do some of that. I'm looking for a meet.
I'm finding it hard to believe.
Why?
Happiness, feelings, personalities, preferences, none of that appears to be genetic. Things like limbs, texture of the skin, the hair color, that appears to be genetic.
Mr. Plowman would disagree with you. I think so would Brooks. But I've yet to hear.
Are they have expertise in genetic engineering?
They're not geneticists.
Right.
No. Plowman. Well, he's a psychologist who studies genetics. So yeah, not a geneticist really. Murray, I feel like maybe he's done enough. Well, he's done hereditarian studies, and but you would be hard pressed, as I understand it, 50 to 60% of pretty much every personality trait comes from your genes, according to twin studies, and
my twins would disagree, man.
Yeah, Don, his father, twin boys.
Well, yeah, but they're fraternal twins, right? They're dyes.
Seriously.
No. That means everything. If they're diazygnotic, then they're as different, as then they're
of
just
course.
different.
I'm just curious how you got so interested in all this stuff.
Why? Well, it seems like it matters the most. You're always interested in what's the biggest deal with humanity. You had this debate about capitalism or what kind of capitalism and so on. It seems like you need some version of capitalism for your world to work.
Whoa, wait a second. How's that? Let's go back to that humanity thing.
Yes.
So what's this about this relationship you have with humanity? What's that like? I mean, can you influence humanity, or do you just do cool creative stuff that to make your life better personally?
Oh, I find humans odd and often unappealing. So
does Spock.
yes, indeed. I was thinking more of Data because I'm more of a Next Generation fan, though. I think I might be getting into Deep Space Nine because of the raw love of capitalism.
Oh, come on. The original series is the only one that matters.
That's what they say.
Come on. Every planet they land on has perfectly breathable air. The aliens speak perfect Midwestern English, and the surface of the planet is made out of linoleum. We find that linoleum is the most abundant material in the universe.
If you have a good story, you can let all of that slide. Or not even a good story, if you have a compelling story, there is something to be said for a compelling narrative. It's hard to imagine. It's hard to explain why you will let some things slide and some things you won't. Whenever
have you
there's
listened to Michael Walsh ever?
Sometimes, yes.
Okay.
He's a little Catholic for my taste.
Mm-hmm.
He needs to realize we're made in the image of chimps, and maybe like 10% we're made in the image of God.
Okay.
If we're lucky.
Well, I think everything's made.
They would be the supermodels.
No. God's a skinny chick? Huh. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why she gets so temperamental, with all the weather all the time. No. I'm no. I don't see any indication that the universe is made in an image of beneficence. Yeah, it seems pretty Hobbesian to me, from what I know of evolution. I mean, about half of the animals we know of are parasites. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I don't see. I see goodness as being something possibly not even of this world, but above it, though it might be made manifest in this world. Thusly, my desire for genetic engineering to overcome our flawed nature. And I suppose the idea is that, well, you're making humans in the image of humans. And it's like, it's chimps. Sounds pretty good to me.
With this, so you believe
I think we're
it'll
pretty
be,
far removed from that in the science right now. Genetics is complicated stuff, and we can barely
Complicated, yes.
and it's amazingly complicated, and we barely just tiniest little bit. And
well, that's why I had to change my logo.
Your logo.
My catchphrase. I used to played the video game Nier Automata, so I got a little carried away. So glory to the new mankind. And then I thought about it. Now I am going to glory to the improved mankind, because we're probably going to be able to find some genes that are better than other genes. But yeah, it's going to be we're a long ways away from remaking humanity. We can just make minor improvements for a generation.
hey, if I can a little longer, or have my bones ache a little less, that'd be nice.
Yeah, it would be a humanity 1.5. Or maybe probably more like 1.2 if we're honest.
Yeah. So you think it'll be more of a genetic singularity than a robotic singularity?
I honestly don't know enough about whether robots can become sentient or not. That's quite beyond my thing. But yeah, it does seem like we're going to be able to do safe gene splicing on pregnant ladies pretty soon. I'm a little worried because
Wait a second. If they're pregnant, the genes are already in place.
well, you can take an embryo and mess with it. A scientist in China supposedly has already done that, though there's ethical qualms with that.
Right.
I think
With the Chinese guys with messing in embryos in general.
Just don't worry. I'm sure that we won't have another Star Trek reference with another Khan-Noonien Singh running around.
Khan-Noonien Singh, did that guy even look Indian?
Well, he was Montalban, so he's more Spanish, but yeah.
Okay, well then why do you give him the name Singh? All right.
I think they were two because of the actual Indian Singh, who is the founding line of the Sikh group. So I don't know a lot about that particular religion, but I do know there are a lot of guys going around with the last name Singh in the Sikh religion, and it's based on it's like going around calling yourself Jesus.
Okay.
Or Muhammad.
Though they were prophets, none of them were divine in the same nature of Jesus. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that's a very interesting religion.
Mm-hmm.
They have the best symbol of any religion ever. Their symbol is 3 swords in a circle. Beat that.
Yeah.
Three just straight up 3 swords. Yeah. Sikhism is a very, very interesting religion, and a lot of them are named Singh. And
I'm involved in politics here in Canada, so large Indian groups here, and my friends one day says to me, never ever, whatever you're doing at a political event or if you have to take a registration, don't take the S line, because it's all guys' names with the last name Singh, and you're doing pages of just registration documents.
All right.
So Henry, well, what's your day job? What do you do?
I just work in a restaurant. What about you?
Me? I am an engineer, electrical engineer and software engineer.
Okay. Wait, hold on. An electrical engineer and a software engineer?
Yeah.
Aren't those two completely separate things?
Usually.
Huh. Did you do electrical engineering and then you're like, oh no, I want to do something else, and then you did
Well,
software?
kind of. Well, no, I was a nerdy kid. I got into them both when I was like really young. And music. I got into electronics, computers, and music when I was really, really, really young. And I just learned them all on my own. Hit the library and started building stuff, programming, and went to school. And first part of my career, I was electrical engineer because I just felt more confident in that. I double majored. And after a while, the building blocks changed. And I said, these new building blocks are not as interesting. Now I'm interested in doing software professionally.
Yeah.
So, but either I cross the line all the time. I'll be happy to talk forever about any kind of engineering.
All right. But what's your take on genes from the engineering perspective? Because with
it's pretty fascinating. First, I mean, the whole mechanism is incredibly fascinating. You know, we've got a binary, well, actually quad code for GCAT, and a way of a mechanism for duplicating, and a mechanism of interpretation. It ends up being a lot like a machine language or assembly code on computers. A lot of parallels. There are an awful lot of parallels, and the digital nature of it also has to do with heredity. Mendel discovered that you inherit traits from mother or father, but you don't get a mix. You get one of here, run here. They don't just mix. You don't just average out. And that was the first insight into the digital nature of genetics.
Yeah.
So you've got this mechanism. It's just amazing.
Hold on. I understand that. Yeah. We know what alleles are, but
yeah.
But what do you mean digital? The digital nature of genetics. How is? There's recessive. What's the reverse? There's recessive, aggressive, dominant. Thank you.
Not aggressive. Dominant.
Okay, recessive.
so
dominant, and then there's codominance, but does that work the same way in a computer?
That doesn't. But down to the GCAT level, that's binary, man.
Well,
and the interpretation of those GCAT strands, that's binary. And then there's this mechanism that pulls them off and generates amino acids and all, and that's a mechanism that's amazing. And the whole thing is just an amazing mechanism.
All right, and even though we're becoming, this is hard to describe. The technology is moving so fast when it comes to CRISPR-Cas9 or other kinds of genetic engineering. They're able to do things now that was unimaginable just a few years ago. Yeah. And everything's just accelerating quicker and quicker and quicker. So we're not really sure where this technology is going to take us and how good we're going to get, how quickly.
Well, actually, we can.
Really? You think
oh, yeah. It's actually an economic system. It's like the reason Moore's law works.
But hold on, is Moore's law still going on?
Yes.
And it hasn't slowed down?
Not appreciably.
All right, how? Why?
Good question. Good question. I can tell you why. Okay. So Moore's law states that the number of transistors on a chip double every 2 years. A couple of variations of it, roughly double every 2 years. And that's an exponential relationship. And it's worked pretty well since 1967, 66, when he proposed it. When he went from 2 transistors to 4 transistors on the chip. Now Moore didn't expect this would keep going like this for so long, but he said, look, I doubled this much time, we can do it again. And but there's a mechanism behind Moore's law that's far more important than the silicon, and that is in nature anywhere. Whenever you have exponential growth, the reason for that exponential growth is positive feedback. Because whenever you grow, feedback comes around and lets you grow more. Like compound interest in a bank.
Yeah.
Right? Compound interest in a bank. As soon as you get more money in your account, take a percentage, it comes, that's that much more. And then grows the account that much more. Oh, it's even that much more. Compound interest is positive feedback. And what we have with Moore's law is not only positive feedback, but multiple mechanisms of positive feedback. So that if 1 or 2 pooper out for whatever reason, you still have positive feedback. And you can predict growth very accurately if you know the mechanisms of positive feedback. That means evolutionary growth, perhaps, or genetic growth. We can tell you if there's positive feedback and by how much and what the limitations on the positive feedback are. So, for instance, let's say you are a semiconductor manufacturer. That's a stretch perhaps, but okay. And you're running this company, you make semiconductors, some chips. And let's say you invest some R&D money and come up with a chip that's better by some measurable amount. And you come up with a better chip. And you start selling those to customers. And one of your customers makes test equipment. And that customer can make better test equipment because of your chip. But you use test equipment to test out your chips, the manufacturing line. So you can now buy better test equipment, which means you can now make better chips. So you make another model, it's even better. And one of your other customers now is in the photolithography business. And he can make better photolithography machines now because of your new chip. Oh, you use photolithography machines in your fab floor. So now you can make better chips.
Okay, and this relates, it's easy to understand.
This is a process with positive feedback, multiple mechanisms of positive feedback, and they're unconstrained. Normally a positive feedback mechanism has a limit. The pipe only allows so much. But this has no limit because now that you've got better photolithography machines to make better chips, you can now use even better photolithography machines to make even better chips. There's no limit. So now, that's why.
Now, hold on.
This has gone for like.
Eventually.
I'm sorry.
Isn't there a limit eventually? Isn't there just so?
Yes. Yeah. There's lots of limits, and we keep hitting them, and we keep finding ways around them.
Okay. Good point.
Because the incentive is there. And so they find better ways to solve this. So for instance, when bipolar transistors were sucking up, were taking up too much power and too much space, they switched to field effect transistors, which are simpler. We put more on. And then they found out that it was still eating up too much power. So they used this thing called complementary field effect transistors, very little power. And then the next problem came up and the next problem came up, and they found ways around it each time because the incentive was there and because the equipment and the technology was helping right along, as well as applications. So there are multiple, it turns out there are about a dozen mechanisms of positive feedback at work here. And none of them seem to have limits.
Well,
sure, some of them will fade in and out, but none of them seem to have limits.
I suppose the humble thing to say is that with genetics, especially with the discovery of quote unquote junk DNA, that they used to think 90% of your DNA was just useless. And some people suspected it actually did something. Turns out it does a lot, though we're not entirely sure what it does yet. And but what you're saying, and probably why this genetic engineer, why CRISPR-Cas9 is becoming quick, is getting better and better, quicker and quicker, is because it has access to all of those positive feedback mechanisms you mentioned. All the technology is becoming cheaper, all of it's becoming faster, and it's just
More
getting
accessible to more people.
more accessible to more people. Also, more and more people are, there's a lot more people doing a lot more research. South America, it's like there are semi-prosperous economies and some decent labs, and just South America, for example, and more colleges are getting into it. And you don't need to break your bank to have a competitive a bio lab anymore. And so competition, and everything's getting cheaper, and those feedback loops you mentioned, and people are worried about how to make enough food and how to make things safer, and there's still a lot of money in big ag, for example.
Right. But you have to understand the feedback loops really, really well. And in genetic engineering, I don't know the feedback loops there.
Well,
I don't think you do either.
But
if you do know the feedback loops really well, if you understand the mechanisms really well, you can predict it quite accurately. Very much like Moore's law.
All right.
Which actually wasn't predicted intentionally for this many years. It just happened to work out.
All right. That's fascinating. I'm just not sure with genetic engineering, because it's still so new.
Right.
It's new, it's complicated, and just as we think so much of the genetic code is not useful, there's so much of the code we don't understand or don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's so much we don't know.
You're up on
and one of the things that helps Moore's law is the immediacy of it. As soon as I come up with this new chip, somebody can make a new photolithography machine pretty quickly. So there's with feedback loops, it's how fast the loop comes around, its constraints, limitations, various kinds. There's a lot. If you know your feedback loops really, really well, you can predict this stuff. Otherwise, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's a growing industry. I don't know how well we can predict it at this point.
Yeah, it is growing.
Yeah. However, what are we going to do with democracy now that it seems people, because democracy was presumed that you could take regular people and make them semi-reasonable. You can make them semi-educated, and that you could take and it also, and I just don't think that's true.
I think it's true. The problem is that the education system has stopped working in the way its intended function, and so we no longer are creating reasonable people out of the education system. If you go back to
I've never met. All right, but I barely meet anyone who's a reasonable person, unless they're genetically inclined to be nerds. I mean, it just doesn't seem like evidence matters very much to anyone to almost anyone ever.
Yeah, because you're growing up in with the generation that unfortunately has been taught in the schools that a lot of that stuff. I'm probably my generation is probably the last ones who got a proper education, from what I can tell.
Right. Yeah. Let's extend this concept of the feedback loop to schools, shall we?
Why not?
Now, at some fundamental level, at a very fundamental level, education, dirt simple. You don't need a lot of money. You don't need technology. You don't need a lot of skills. You need a good teacher and an eager student. That's all. So that should be a very simple thing to implement. Yet, we're really bad at it. We're truly bad at it. Why is it? Well, you can't do, it's tough doing democracy. Hell, you can't even do schooling.
The point of schooling originally, among other things, was for our education was originally built by the Germans to beat the French and provide soldiers and workers for the factories. So they wanted to inculcate a broader German appeal to all these places they were conquering and adding to the country. And similar to that was in the United States, they didn't have the same situation. They were more like they were bringing all these immigrants from all over the place, so they wanted to get those people to, can't remember his name, but the one guy said, back in the day, you would be trying to build a road, and you would hire a bunch of Irish and Italian immigrants, and they'd get drunk and be throwing stones at each other all day, and that was no way to build your roads. So they wanted to bring in this education system that would basically create and give everyone common shared experiences, common shared knowledges, and basically civilize the barbarians. However, in the last 30, 40 years, our friends from the Long March of the Institution guys came in and have destroyed the education system and started instead of training people into being citizens, they've been training people to be barbarians.
Indeed. Rousseau, and I don't even think it's about Rousseau, honestly. I used to blame everything on him. But I think there's something in humanity that, especially if you get rich and powerful enough, if you have a bunch of dirt poor, incredibly ignorant Southern Italian and Irish immigrants, you're forced to confront that problem. And it was you who said we have the problem of the big, rich, peaceful, stupid country. You tend to get stupid when everything's big, rich, and peaceful.
Yeah, that's me.
Okay, that is you. That is. I would agree with that. Have you read there's a very good book by I think it was Christopher. Yeah, it was Christopher Caldwell, and he wrote that book on human rights, and it was Age of Entitlement, which is weird. I don't think his title is that good, but it's a fantastic book. And it just goes through and it's a good companion piece to Roger Scruton's Fools, Firebrands, and Frauds. And there's this constant theme that if you get rich and powerful enough, you just start indulging in these stupid, narcissistic, intellectual onanism. That's bad. It's barbarous, and you can't build anything with it. I mean, the French philosophers couldn't build a pretty church, let alone Notre Dame. And yet they are utterly confident that they can replace some of the most beautiful architecture in the world, an entire basis of a civilization, with some foppish, overeducated sex perverts.
Yeah, pretty much. I just remember back in the summertime when we were allowed to have at least a few people over. I had 10 people over, and there were these two girls who were friends of mine, and they were sitting in a corner, and they were just going down the rabbit hole of the new feminism and all the stuff that comes out, the latest wave, and just on gender roles and all this stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, can only happen in a civilization that's rich. When you've solved all the other little problems that are out there, you can have these conversations.
I'm thinking about that. I can't help but think about that you described there as like done with like Monty Python voices or something, It's like, yes.
The two of them were just talking, and they're like, I don't really care. This is not for me. I'm in history, but it just seems, it's like we're going through the late parts of the Roman Republic when they were or even the Roman Empire, when they were too busy having their breads and circuses to notice all the barbarian armies approaching at the gate. So
well, that was pretty late. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if we're there yet. A lot of ruin in a nation, as a Scotsman once said. Has feminism, have they tried doing any evolutionary psychology at all? So if boys have a strong tendency to play with trucks, with objects, girls have a strong tendency to play with dolls and other human things. They have more of a care ethic. Boys have they're interested in objects more. This has been documented in Rhesus's monkeys. This has been documented in kids all over the world. And this has been documented, you know, when kids are too small, they're just babies, they just look at things. Boys are more likely to, you notice their eyes, they're more likely to look at trucks, whereas girls are more likely to look at dolls or things that look like people. And this has been documented again and again and again. Furthermore, there's one type of, some females who have more testosterone in their brain, so they have more masculine stuff, and they tend to play with trucks. So does any of that information make its way into, this is Godsad's argument, and as I understand it, there's many evolutionary and even if you believe in evolution, it just makes sense for boys and girls to be made differently, because we, mostly in the girls' favor, because, in evolution terms, girls are more important than boys, because, they're to be protected and cared for, and, because men are, we're expendable.
Right.
They perform that important function of a species, giving birth.
Yeah, that's kind of important. Yeah, that's the main thing. So with feminism, do they connect it with that research at all?
I'm not really. My mother would be much better able to answer that particular question, since that's and she's a second generation feminist, so she's like very practical. But
I'm not concerned. I'm not convinced feminism is real anymore.
It's like,
or has an ideological foundation anymore, but is more about generating unrest and lawsuits. And I think it's more lawsuits than reality. I think it's
or about revenge.
Let me rephrase that. More things like graft and lawsuits than ideology.
Okay. There's there's that is true, but
for instance,
there's always a real
a
real ideological thing, I think, behind all of this nonsense, or maybe a deep spiritual yearning.
Maybe not. Not. I mean, if there's money to be made, who cares
there
about
are
the ideology?
certainly true
right?
believers out there in any movement that buy the ideology, and they're not just there for the corruption.
Well,
they buy it maybe, but is the ideology, is it centered around the ideology? Is it guided? So for instance, the classic thing is that women make 72% of what a man's salary.
Yeah, it's all nonsense, but yeah.
Right? That's all nonsense. That's a talking point, but that's what a lot of it's based on. And then if you compare deaths on the job, men outnumber women. It's like 95 to 5%.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's huge, right? So this is all about, it's clear to me that it's not ideologically sound. They don't have principles that guide them, that they care about, that the foundation for the movement, but rather it's a cool way to make to get lawsuits, to get airtime, to have riots and such. Peaceful demonstrations and such.
Yeah, I was reading a book, Blood Meridian, and the book ended in what is either the horrific rape or a murder of the titular character. And it was so utterly horrific. It was as if it was like witnessing Cain and Abel with your own eyes. And because of that, it occurred to me that I was pretty sure that humans had a soul, in part because of that. And I think it would be easier if the atheists were right and we were just hyper intelligent monkeys trying to jockey for power. But no, I do think we have a soul, and it's often corrupted by our stupidity and vanity. And what I notice with a lot of this stuff is there's just a lot of unhappy people in the world. And it used to be if you were unhappy, you would go to. And I understand it. Well,
Sorry,
know,
you
I-
used to go
I-
where there, Henry? I'm sorry, I didn't hear your final there.
oh, there's a lot of unhappy people in the world, and I understand it.
Mhm.
You know, I think I've described the human body as a flesh prison, the human body and the human mind as a flesh prison.
Mhm.
It's, we're often not given very, no, excuse me.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're often not given very good equipment. No,
Okay.
all right. Let me see. Hold on. Okay. All right. I think this is okay. Yeah. Sorry, you may have to edit that, but I think everything else is okay.
That was me. I was dialing over here.
Okay, jerk. All right, but anyway, do you ever notice how unhappy they are? The two feminists you were talking to. I'm always worried how unhappy they look.
Yeah, I know them very well. They have definitely had abuse in their backgrounds, so they're kind of happy now with their lives. But yeah, just there's a certain unhappiness that you can get them. Like the one girl is very frightened of COVID and would not go out and do stuff. And I was like, hey, I can get you this thing here and that thing there. And the other one was a bit better, but they've both been through their fair share of like stuff. But yeah, I get you. I mean, a lot of people are unhappy out there, and they used to go for God for religion for their answers, and now they go to these ideologies for their answers. And much like the Marxists, who were never really truly happy, these people are not happy with the results they're getting. They're not getting like good out of it. I mean, it kind of reminds me the difference between Islam and Christianity is that in Islam, if you have a question about something, generally your mullah or whoever is your spiritual leader has the answer. Versus Christianity, when you go to your priest or your reverend and ask a question, and he says, "Well, check these verses in the Bible," and but really, you should make up your own mind and come to your own determination based on the scriptures. Like,
All right. Do Catholics do that, or can the priest tell
Not
you?
so much.
Yeah.
Not so much.
Yeah,
Okay. All right.
Catholics
I've heard different takes.
I'm an Anglican, so that's how it works for us. But that I think that really is the genius of the Protestant Reformation was that you should figure this out on your own. We're just here to kind of guide you along.
I'm just glad an Anglican is still thinking about Jesus. Sorry.
No, it's true. In Canada is a little bit better, at least from my perspective. But yeah.
All right, neat. No, I think there is. I think if you're a naturally unhappy person, I'll write about this later. If you're a naturally unhappy person, but like you're poor, or there's a war going on, or diseases are running rampant, not COVID, but like, real bad disease.
Yeah.
And then you can focus
Real
on
diseases.
and you can focus on that. Yeah, I am a diseasist. And I'm also a human supremacist, though not an extreme one. Like, if robots have souls, we should give them rights and stuff. But but once you have, and you see this with rock stars all the time, or pops, whoever, once they've made it, once they can get as much money and power, they can buy all the drugs they want, they don't have to work, and they're kind of left alone with whatever's in them that's broken. A lot of artists turn to art to try to fix what's broken in them, or try to help them with being broken. And then they realize, and then they're just confronted with their brokenness, and that's it. And to make matters worse, because they have so much money, they're separate from, back in the day, you had, 2 brothers and 4 sisters, and you lived in a community, and as annoying as that was, it was probably helpful for a lot of psychologically damaged people, for a lot of fragile people. And so now you have these woke ladies. Like, I just have this image of a woke lady with screaming with weird hair.
Okay.
And but the thing is, maybe she's and I'm not talking about the super ugly or the super fat, but she's kind of plain looking, but a little bit pretty. But like she has like the ugliest boy haircut ever.
Right. Yeah.
And she goes out of her way to make herself look unattractive, even though, you know, you just do a little bit and you'd be pretty cute. And but there's a desire for it to be unattractive and miserable. And
Right.
No, it makes
I
me
should say
worry.
these two are not super woke, so they weren't that kind of problem.
Yeah.
They were just they're very interested in the gender stuff, so they're not quite as bad as
No, I'm interested. Well, I'm interested in the gender stuff too, but from a perspective of evolutionary psychology.
they were definitely way more woke than me, but they were not crazy woke. Like,
Okay.
but yeah.
Damn it.
Anyways, maybe we should end it here since you're getting a call.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. That'll be fine.
Sounds good.
It's been
That'll
a
be
fascinating
good.
discussion with you.
Oh, I'm glad you like it.
Mhm.
You can try it again sometime, and
Yep.
I guess that's it. Let me know what else you want to talk about. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. It's been a great thing. Oh, I guess one question I do have for you is how
Yes.
did you find Ricochet?
How did I find Ricochet? I followed it from NRO, and I used to read NRO, and then eventually you read enough of something or you listen to enough of a podcast, you get their basic idea.
Right.
And in Ricochet, you eternally have so much stuff and such a weird amount of stuff that it's always fascinating.
Yeah.
And you know, I felt like I got what NRO was about, so now I wanted to, you know, listen to other folks.
Okay, cool. Well, it's been a fascinating discussion with you, and it's going to be one for the record books, I think. I hope it generates some discussion. Certainly, I was happy to see what happened here. So we'll be seeing.
You should have done the beginning in a deep narrator voice.
We should have Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
In the beginning, there was math, and God was the physicist.
Deeper from the diaphragm.
And God was the physicist. No, that sounds good. God was the physicist.
Yeah, you can do it.
Okay.
Work on it.
We'll try that next time.
Yeah.
I have an entire theology mapped out.
Okay,
Excellent.
no problem. Well, I'll see you guys in the comments.
See you.
Take care.
Bye.